Alright, this is Algebra Teak A.5A. And so our objective here is to can solve a linear equations that require the distributive property. And we also want to can solve linear equations with variables on both sides. So this is taking on two different tasks. Alright. This one right here has distributive because you can see the parentheses, and because there's a parentheses you know you have to distribute something to it. Alright, so we're going to take our 6 and we're going to multiply it to x, and we're going to get 6x. Then we're going to take our 6 and multiply it to negative 7. Remember, we're including this negative with it, so it's negative 42. We bring down our equal sign. Now we're going to distribute 10 times x, and we're going to get 10x. Then next is 10 times 4, and 10 times 4 is 40. Alright, so we have variables on both sides of the equal sign, and we've talked about this before. This is kind of like a wall or a net. Alright, and so you kind of want to get the x's on one side of the wall and the numbers on the other side of the walls. We always want to get rid of the add and subtract first. So get rid of add and subtract first. Alright, and that's with the plain number. And so we're only talking about with plain numbers. Alright, so we have a negative 42. So we want to move the negative 42 over here with the 40. So the opposite of negative 42 is positive 42. I'll bring down my 6x because that's the only thing. This is a zero pair because they cancel each other out. The equal sign is still there, and it's still within the wall. Bring down our 10x and add 40 plus 42, and we get 82. Alright, we're still getting rid of the add and subtract first, and so if you notice this time we have x's on both sides. We have like 6 x's on one side and 10 x's on the other. So what we're going to do is since we move the number in this direction, now we're going to take the letter and we're going to go in the other direction. Alright, so this is a positive 10x, so we're going to subtract 10x to both sides. And don't forget, the 6 has a plus on it. So this is going to be a negative 4x equals, this is a zero pair, and this is 82. So now we have negative 4x on one side of the wall, or the equal sign, and the other one on the 82 is just a plain number. Now we got to separate the 4 away from x. And so we ask ourselves a question: what's the variable? What's being done to the variable? And we do the opposite of both sides. So let's ask ourselves, let's answer those questions. What's the variable? You should say it's x because the x is right there. What's being done to x? Well, it's being multiplied by a negative 4. Whenever you see a number and a letter side by side, that means multiply. So the opposite is divide both sides by negative 4. So let me rephrase it again. What's my variable? It's x. What's being done to x? It's being multiplied by negative 4. The opposite of multiply by negative 4 is divide by negative 4 to both sides of the equal sign. Alright, if you notice, negative 4 and a negative 4 as a fraction makes 1. And 1 times x is x. Now, we have a negative here, and so our answer is going to be a negative, but we can reduce this, so we can divide both sides by 2. And so when I do, I could get 41 over 2. So one answer is x equals a negative 41 over 2. We can change this to a decimal. I mean, we could. Alright, we could say that it's a negative 20.5, which is true. That's another thing we could do. Alright, a lot of kids like to say negative 20 and 1/2. This is another one's correct. But really in our class in algebra we'll just leave it as an improper fraction. As long as you simplify it, you are good. Let's go to the next question. Alright, here's another one. Alright, so what would be my first first thing to do, well, you see a parentheses, so you hopefully would be distribute. And so I'm going to distribute. Now watch out, because the 5 that's right next to the parentheses, this 5 right here, has a negative right in front of it. And remember what we said is that the negative follows that number. We don't go around saying 5 negative, we say negative 5. So these two are together. So we're going to distribute negative 5 to x first. Now, a lot of kids, what they do is they'll take these two and make it negative 9 or negative 1 or something like that, and that's incorrect. We have to follow Pemdas, and Pemdas is parentheses, which we can't do anything to our parentheses, exponent. We don't have an exponent. Then multiply, in which we do. We can multiply a 5, or in this case a negative 5, to the parentheses. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to distribute negative 5 to x. And when I do, I get negative 5x. Then I'm going to distribute negative 5 to 3. So negative 5 times 3 is a negative 15. I'm going to go ahead and bring down my negative 4 and equals and 9 sign. Now I've distributed and multiplied. So now I got to find like terms. Do I have any like terms on the same side of the equal sign? So like we said before, I messed up there. We said before that this is like a wall. So I want to combine like terms. So when I combine like terms, I have to find two things that are the same. Either they're both x's or they're both numbers. So if you look in this case, I have keep using the wrong marker. We have a negative 4 and a negative 15. They're both plain numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and put negative 5x down because it does not have another x on this side. But I can go ahead and say negative 4 minus 15, which is a negative 19. Put our equal sign 9 here. Alright, we can ask ourselves, what's the variable? Well, we can see that our variable is x, and that it's being multiplied by negative 5 and being subtracted by x. And we always get rid of the add and subtract part first. So I'm going to add 19 to both sides because we do the opposite. So we get negative 5x. This becomes a 0 pair. Bring by my equal sign, and then plus 9 plus 19 is 28. Now again, we ask ourselves, what's the variable? Our variable is x. It's right here. And we ask, what's being done to x? It's being multiplied by negative 5. So the opposite of multiply by negative 5 is divide everything by negative 5. Again, when we do this, these 5's cancel out. So we have x equals, we have an answer of negative 28 over 5. Or you could say that if you simplified it, and that's if you want to simplify it, this answer is acceptable right now. But if you were told to simplify, you could say negative 5 and 3/5, or you could say negative 5.6. However, in our class, we can just leave it as an improper fraction, and we are good. Let's go to the third example. All right, this one, there's no no distributing here. We do have variables on both sides. So the first thing we need to do is see if we have anything we can combine like terms. So I'm looking, here's my wall like we talked about before, my tennis court net like we talked about in class. And I want to see if there's anything that I can combine first on one side and then look at the other side and see if I can combine anything. Now remember, when we say combine like terms, we're looking for the items that have like the same x's, or if they're just plain numbers, or if they have an x squared, those type of family members. And if you look, we do have a positive 6x and a minus 9x. So 6x minus 9x, if I subtract those give me a negative 3x. Plus 7, I'm just going to bring everything down, 4x minus 14. Alright, now we want to get the variables on one side, that's the letter x, and the numbers on the other. I always like getting the adding subtract part first. Again, here's our wall. Whenever we move something to the opposite side of the wall or the tennis court, we have to do the opposite. So instead of plus 7, right here, we're going to say negative 7 to both sides. Bring down my negative 3x. Plus 7, negative 7 makes a 0 pair. Bring down my 4x. Negative 14 and a negative 7 is a negative 21. Alright, still have that wall. And so now we're going to move the x's, this guy here, we're going to move this guy here to the other side. Alright, so the opposite of plus 4x is minus 4x. So when I do this, a negative 3 and a negative 4 make a negative 7x equals a negative 21. We're almost done. We want to separate the 7 away from the x because we just want x by itself. So ask yourself what's being done to the variable. It's being multiplied by x. If it's the opposite of multiply by x, we're going to say divide by negative 7 to both sides. And as you can see, my 7's will cancel out. And I have x equals, and two negatives are going to make a positive. So that's really a positive. And 7 goes into 21 3 times. So my answer is 3. And the best way to do this to check is to plug in the 3 into all the x's and see if one side equals the other side.